recording. There we go. Now, I still want to do, like I said, a little more on the table here. Remember, though, just as a reminder, and I've already shown this before in other lectures and these other videos, but if you go to Window, remember, there is, in the Window menu in Blender, Save Screenshot, right? You click on that, and you just give it a name and save it, like, right on your desktop, right? Save Screenshot, and you've got a picture of this window with this in here saved. That way I can kind of take a look and kind of say, okay, cool, you're on task, everything's looking good. That's how easy it is to do your progress checks. Window, save screenshot, right? So there you go. Technically, if you really need to, you can always take a picture of it with your phone. I will accept that as well. But this is the best way to do it, right? Window, save screenshot. So I just wanted to kind of remind you guys about that. Remember, it's up on the board, right? Right at the top, progress checks, window, make sure you save screenshot. But what I wanted to do here is I really just wanted to put some bevels on this, just so we get a little more practice bevels. And I wanted to show you applying your modifiers, right? I have these extra 4 buttons. That's because of add-ons I have. I'm really going to save talking about those add-ons for next week, right? I just want a little more practice at doing this stuff manually so you know how to do that. And then I'll show you some cool add-ons like Auto Mirror, the Loop and Mesh tools, modifier tools, which brings these up. So if you don't always see everything that you see in my interface, that's because I've just got a couple of add-ons turned on that you don't need, but they do speed up the process a little bit. But I want you guys to know how to do this stock, and then we can kind of bring in some add-ons as we go into later models. So in this case, remember, 4 is object mode, right? And at any point, you can left-click on an object, any object. It'll select it here, right? 4 for object mode, right there. And of course, right, you have them in the outliner here as well. And if I want, I could change the name of this, right? Double left-click, and I could say, hey, let's change that to table braces, right? Remember, pretty easy to just double left-click on something in the outliner and name it. Now, in this case, I want to bevel the edges. So remember, 1 is edit mode, but it is a menu here, right? You can just click on the menu here and go to edit mode. Remember, we're using industry compatible, so that's using those quick keys. But remember, in industry compatible, 1 is edit mode, but 2 is also edit mode, but edges, right? So when you're in edit mode, you have the buttons vertex, edge, face, but there's also quick keys, 1, 2, 3, right? 4 is object. So 2 is edge, and of course I can come in here, and if you want, you can leave your move tool on. But remember, Q is your select tool, right? Q is your select tool. Now, by default, it should be your box select, right? Where you see kind of the orange dotted box. But believe it or not, Q, remember Q for quiz, right? Q for quit. That's your quick key for that tool. But if you hit Q again, it goes to circle select. And that's actually kind of a drag select, where you just move your cursor, and it's kind of like a paint select, right? Even has a brush radius size. You can hit Q again, and it goes to lasso, which is like box, but it's more of a proper lasso, although it won't select stuff on the back. You have to turn on X-ray shade for that. If you hit Q one more time, it turns on your tweak tool, which is honestly not useful for this, but on later models, it'll be very useful, right? You can just left-click drag to move stuff, which is really cool. And if you hit Q one more time, it goes back to that regular stock kind of default box select, which usually used to just left-click on stuff, but if you left-click drag, it makes a box, and whenever that box touches, it selects. It won't select stuff on the back unless you have X-ray shade on, right? And that technically is up here, right? Kind of makes everything see-through, and then you'll see your box selects everything. There's a quick key for that, right? Alt-X. You probably don't have to worry about that right now, but at least I've briefly mentioned it in video form, right? Just trying to kind of remind you of some of these things, but if you ever find yourself in a position where your box select is not behaving like normal, look and see if it's still that box, or if it's circle, or it looks like kind of almost like Africa, right? And then tweak. Q just toggles those through, right? So you just keep hitting Q and it toggles through those, it cycles through those, which is actually really cool. Every one of those tools can be assigned to its own shortcut. Even mouse buttons, if you have a mouse that's more than 6 buttons, right? You'll notice I actually have circle select and tweak set to actually other mouse buttons, right? So I just wanted to kind of mention that. Kind of showed that to a couple of you guys the other day, right? So now I really wanted to just bevel some stuff. Technically, if I wanted to, I could bevel kind of all 4 edge loops, but I think I'm just going to do the outsides just as kind of a quick reminder. Remember, you can left click and shift left click. Remember, shift adds to selections. And then shift left click, right? Remember, left click when you're using industry compatible is your primary interaction, right? That's the way usually you'll grab most of your handles and do most of your selections. Left click. Shift adds and often subtracts in Blender. Sometimes Control does, like with circle select, Control will deselect instead of Shift. But a lot of the times it actually is Shift for both, right? For adding and subtracting. Shift, right? And then, of course, we have our Bevel tool down here, right? Remember, we're in Modeling Workspace. Way down here is Bevel. Click on that. Brings up the yellow handle. Technically, you could do middle mouse button for this, right? So if I hold down middle mouse button, drag, you see how it'll actually do that bevel without having to grab on that yellow handle? Now remember, the moment you let go of this yellow handle or let go of your middle mouse button, and there's a bevel here, you don't want to do it again, right? You don't want to left click again on that yellow or middle mouse click, because that'll do a new bevel on what's selected. In this case, we want to go down to the bevel options, right? There's that little kind of menu in the bottom left corner, and that will be different for different tools, right? So whatever tool you're in, it'll say that down here: inset, extrude, loop cut. You click on it, right? It's kind of the bottom left corner here. You click on it, it opens it up, and there's more options here. In this case, I'm pretty happy with the width, but you can readjust that on this current bevel, right? Just by left-click dragging in here, or even clicking on those little kind of V's that point to the left and right. And there's also segments, right? And this will allow us to just get a couple more segments there. And remember, a great way to turn off your bevel tool is just to hit Q, right? Whatever tool you turn on next will deactivate the previous tool. And the tool that's the most harmless to activate is selection tool, right? Also, usually you want to use your selection tool, right? Usually you're going to switch to a different tool or do different stuff on different edges or polygons. So Q is quite safe, and it's often what you're going to want to switch to anyways. So remember, Q is your quick key for selection tool, and that's a great way to turn off whatever tool you're in. And now we've just got those extra rounded corners. And we can see that's been a big part of what we've been doing on this table, besides loop cuts and shaping and setting up mirror modifier. It was learning about the bevel to create rounded corners on objects so we don't die, right? Remember, you don't really have razor sharp edges on stuff unless it's razors or knives or swords, things that can cut you. Usually there's some kind of small or large rounded corner so that you don't stab yourself or cut yourself. Now, if I go to 4 for object mode, you'll notice I kind of have that faceted shading thing again, right? Remember, that's right click. If you right click, not left click, remember there's a right mouse button, and you should try to get used to using your middle finger or ring finger for that instead of your index, right? You actually should hover your index finger over the left mouse button and then your middle over the middle and right mouse buttons, right? Because that'll kind of work pretty well for it. It's kind of however you feel. But right click, in an object mode, right, that brings up object context menu. And we can just turn on shade smooth to shade that, right? If you want to, you can go back to that green triangle in our modifiers over here. Open up that normal section, turn on auto smooth, and that actually does it a little bit better, right? The angle itself doesn't matter too much. You can change that around, but auto smooth, it does a pretty good job of making the shade smooth look nicer, right? So I will often, for a lot of models, just go to the green triangle down here. It's a couple down from the blue wrench. Open up the normal section and just turn auto smooth on. Remember, in object mode, right click, shade smooth. It's the very top. And that will smooth the normal directions to blend, make these look collectively shaded instead of individually shaded to look, well, smoother, right? Go back to blue wrench. And that gives us a table. Whoop. Actually, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to save. There we go. Control S, not Control Z. Now, at this point, if we wanted to, we could leave this. But if we're done, one of the things when we go back to our blue wrench is we can actually apply these modifiers to finalize them, right? This is generally important, particularly when you want to let somebody else do stuff with them, or you want your mesh to be fully finished, right? Certain things like sculpting, you can't even use mirror modifier on, so you definitely want to apply it. So what you could do is you could actually make this mirror final, right? Right now it's kind of been on consistently, so we get that mirror movement, right? That symmetry, where if I do stuff on one side, it does it on the other side. But you'll notice in our modifier here, the mirror modifier, there is a V that points down. Technically, you can use these to do it, but like I said, I haven't really talked about that yet, so I'm going to ignore it for the moment. But there is this little V. It's kind of right next to the X in your modifier. If I click on that, there is at the very top something called Apply. And now you see when we apply, that modifier's gone. If I go to, say, Edit Mode, you'll notice that that's not working anymore, right? It's all real. Both sides are still there, but you can no longer modify one side and have it affect the other side. So the modifier's truly been applied. When you add a modifier, that modifier is still active, letting you do that symmetry modeling. When you apply it, it's not. It's kind of like you collapsed it or finalized it and said, okay, that thing's applied now. It's no longer active. So it's kind of like you've made it final. And we can just go and do that up here, right? Select the tabletop. Click on that V in the mirror modifier, right? It's like right here. It's right next to the X. Apply. Then we can go to legs, right? Blue wrench, right? That's where these modifiers are. V. Apply. And there we go. In this case, I'm going to go to Save As to kind of maybe say this is version 3, just so we have kind of a couple of different versions, at least for me, at different stages to teach you guys with. And that's the table, right? So it's really just kind of reminders of certain things in general that I wanted you guys to know. A few little information tidbits that I'll keep repeating. We'll talk about more as we go along, like hue toggling through those things. You don't have to worry about that necessarily right now. Honestly, if you're still modeling your table, which I'm expecting you guys to still be working on, you don't need to apply your modifiers yet. But now we know to eventually do that, right? We know to eventually do that. So sometimes you might not even need to do this right now, but now you have context. You have, oh, at some point I want to do that, right? And of course, this will be in video form for you. Now, like I said, I do want to spend, about maybe 5 minutes or so starting up the kind of chair for us, right? So remember, if you want to start a new scene, go to File, Menu, New, General, right? File, New, General. Remember, we'll do a lot of review lecture on this stuff as well. Now, when you do a new scene, it'll switch you back to Layout Workspace. I'll kind of switch back to Modeling. It's a new scene, so your camera and your lights will be visible again. So you go over to your outliner here and click on the eyeballs to turn those off. At that point, I've repeated that tons of times in lecture, right, guys? And it's been in videos a couple times, too. And of course, I want to use symmetry, right? Because I'm just going to kind of make the headrest for our chair, and then we'll kind of make the seat and legs and the kind of connecting arms. We'll do that next week. But we know that we want to set this up for symmetry modeling. So it's the very same process we've done before, right? Right? The moment I turn on Modeling Workspace, it usually sets you to Edit Mode. Remember, your buttons are right, the actual menu options for it are right here. Remember, Loop Cut, way down here. Alt-C, right? Alt-C is the quick key for it. And of course, you'll notice when we go over an edge, you'll see it's going to look like it's going to try to put in a yellow edge loop. So I want to put it through the middle, kind of lined up with the green axis so that we can do symmetry for the X. Remember, just left-clicking puts it right in the middle by default. Of course, I can hit Q, right? Q is the quick key for our selection tool. 3 for face mode, although if you're already in edit mode here, remember the buttons are right here. Just that 3 is the quick key for it, right? And next week's mini quizzes are actually going to be on that stuff. Vertex selection mode, edit, or edge, face, right? So next week we're actually going to do mini quizzes for that stuff. And remember, I could left click on the side face here. Remember, in the select menu, there is the select more less feature. And we've seen this a couple times, right? In the review lectures, in these lectures, right? It's a lot, but we're going to keep seeing this stuff. You notice how I'm not doing anything different than what I did for the table. There's a natural repetition to what we do for a lot of this that you're going to keep seeing throughout this whole semester and even on our next project. Eventually, this stuff's going to stick in your memory better because, well, we're going to keep practicing it, right? But the first, model or two, you're still learning, right? You're still kind of getting used to these tools. Select more or less. I want more. And remember, that just grows the selection to include more polygons, the ones next to it. I can hit delete. Remember, that brings up your delete menu. Remember, I've assigned quick keys to faces and dissolve edges because I use those often. Let's do faces. There we go. That's been deleted. And I'm going to go 4 for object mode again, right? Of course, blue wrench is on in our properties menu. Add modifier. Mirror. And of course, we like to turn clipping on so it keeps these centers together. Which in this case, when I put that loop cut in, it did not do that. Weird. We'll also turn that triangle on. And if I need to, I can go to 2 for edge mode, right? And if I want, in 2 for edge mode, I could double left click. Remember, double left click selects an edge loop. And I can hit W for move, and I can move those towards the center, and clipping will actually merge those together and keep them on the center. That's why clipping is so cool, right? In this case, I want to do a little bit of shaping towards this. So I'm going to hit 3 for face mode, right? Remember, I'm in edit mode. Face. I'm going to select that face, and I'm going to move it back, right? I'll make this thinner for kind of a back for us, right? A headrest. Maybe move it. Maybe grab this face down here. Remember, since this mirror modifier is on, I select one side, it selects the other. So we're getting symmetry modeling. Remember, at this point, this is the only polygon we have in there, so select all or select length will work for this, right? I could always move this up to kind of make it more where the headrest is going to be. What I need is I maybe need some edge loops in here to do a little more shaping. So loop cut. And I can put a loop cut there, and maybe even one like right here, and even one right there because I'm going to do a little more with them. So loop cut, loop cut, loop cut. Now, you can, of course, hit Q to turn your selection tool on, but you can hit W for move. That will do the same thing as selection, where it'll turn off your loop cut tool. And then I can just go in here and grab an edge, because I'm already in 2 for edge mode. And I can move this edge up and in to round the shape off. Now, you can use the single handles, but you see these squares? These squares will allow you to move 2 at a time. So you might find that that actually is a great fast way to make some changes. I'm going to go to 3 for face mode. Remember, the modes are right here in edit mode, though. And I can grab that face right there, and I could kind of move it up and out a little bit. Maybe even rotate it, right? E for rotate. Left-click drag that green handle to kind of give it about an angle. And remember, this is a fantasy chair, so I could easily, if I wanted to, kind of create like a little bit of a horn shape coming off of here, right? The easiest way to do that is with your Extrude tool. It's a tool we haven't seen that much yet, even though it's your most powerful modeling. It's one of your most powerful modeling tools. It's actually right here, right? It's Extrude right there. Control E is the quick key. By default, we have 2 options for it. This is View Extrude, so it'll let you drag in the viewport based on the camera. Middle mouse button will allow you to do that also. But there's also that yellow handle, kind of the yellow line with the yellow circle and the black plus in it. If you left-click drag on that, it extrudes along the average normal direction, which is a fancy way of saying the direction the face is looking. And of course, I could hit E for rotate. Rotate this a little bit, maybe scale a little bit, R for scale. Remember the white handles, the white circles, If you left click drag on those, scale all at the same time. And then I can extrude one more time, grab that yellow plus again, R for scale, scale it in a little bit, maybe rotate, E for rotate. In this case, I'm doing it on the green handle, so it's kind of rotating it this way, so it bends to follow the shape. And then one more extrude, grab that yellow plus, maybe R for scale. Remember, middle mouse button can do uniform scale, so you can grab on these white circles, but if you just hold down middle mouse button, that'll do it also. And now you see we actually have, really that could kind of be some weird face or like armor thing or something like that, right? But also it could be kind of a cool fantasy kind of back headrest for a chair, right? We're not making office chairs, we're making, you know, like wooden chairs, right, that you would have in a kind of medieval fantasy setting. Of course, we're going to do more to this, things like bevel, all that stuff. We're going to make the other parts of the chair. But I'm going to go File, Save As, so I can give it a proper name. Call this 3D Modeling B. Underscore, we usually use underscore for this stuff, chair. I'll save to desktop. And now I've got a chair started. But this is really just about showing us stuff we already mostly know, right? Setting up mirror, deleting half of it, using loop cut. But we now are starting to see what extrusion can do. You notice how that kind of horn shape kind of is an appendage, isn't it? A limb. That's what Extrude Tool's made for. Extrude will allow you to move a face to a different part of the model. The original faces next to it will not be changed, and it creates new geometry in between. Two of your most powerful modeling tools for doing this stuff are loop cut and extrude. Loop cut and extrude. Now, honestly, I'm not expecting you guys to really be starting the chair today. Some of you guys might be, a lot of you probably aren't. You're still going to be doing last-minute finishing touches on your table. That's fine. I'm going to do plenty of review lecture on this. But remember, at some point I need to do the lecture for the first time. And now you'll have a video for this so that all of you guys that are ready can keep working. For those that you maybe are still working on the table, hey, we're going to see this lecture a bunch of times when we do review lectures. You've got a video for it now, so you can always reference that as well. All right, I'm going to save this, stop this recording, and upload it for you guys.